Making a manga is an extremely time-consuming and sometimes difficult process. Whenever I read manga, I always find myself looking in complete awe at some of the pages that manga art is able to make. I know there's typically a team behind most manga series that help the author with the creative process. For example, the author themselves writes the story and can storyboard the panels, while they have other artists deal with the final rendering of the characters, background, or the inking. Manga artists typically work ridiculous hours, especially to keep up with the pace of a weekly series. With a team, however, that time can be cut down significantly, but when you're all by yourself, I can only guess how much pressure that puts on a person. What I want to do is give myself a little taste of that process by creating my own one-shot manga, and I'll tell you right now, that was definitely more difficult than I had anticipated. While I enjoyed the process, it really just made me even more impressed with how manga artists can pump out manga pages like these every week or so and just keep it moving. Anyway, let's proceed with the main meat of the video. This is how I created a short one-shot manga in a day. To preface, I want to say that I didn't expect to finish all I had planned in one day. I was just in such a flow state that I didn't want to stop and continue where I left off the next day, knowing that I still had to record and make this video after all was done. So I just kept pushing through. To start, I sketched out the two main characters of the story. The first character is a young mermaid girl who we see in the first page along with the other main character. I took some inspiration off Pinterest and Google Images to kind of gauge how I wanted her to look. Give her some ears that almost look like fins, a mermaid-looking tail, scales dotted across her cheeks and shoulders, and gills on the sides of her torso. I didn't have any sort of name in mind for her when I was drawing, so let me know in the comments what kind of name you think she'd have. If this video does at least a tiny bit well, maybe I'll do a part 2, featuring whatever name best suits her. As for the second character of the story, I decided to make a young shonen-looking boy around the same age as the mermaid girl. You can see I had a bit of trouble with designing how I wanted to sort of make him stand in the image, so I just gave him like a more like neutral pose. For the boy in particular, I wanted him to be dressed in sort of more outdoorsy wears for, say, like hot weather or tropical weather, since the majority of this scene is going to be taking place on the beach. Along with the girl, I also didn't give the boy any sort of name, so if you can come up with any name that you think would suit him best, let me know. Before starting on the manga proper, I wanted to do a storyboard to better help me visualize the scenes I'm going to be rendering. This is standard practice for mangaka to storyboard their scenes, but it's not something I've really done before. I've done comics before, but I've only drawn them page by page without prior planning on how the pages would be laid out. Getting into the practice of storyboarding I feel is really going to help me in the long run. I still have my own minor personal issue of being too detailed sometimes with the sketches, that it then takes time away that I would have when going into the final render. If you're an aspiring manga artist, I highly encourage you to storyboard your drafts first and to not get so caught up in the details of the sketch. I keep having to tell myself that I can worry about the final details later, but I still end up being a little too nitpicky on the sketch, even when I know I shouldn't be. I'm not going to show the entirety of the storyboarding process because it did take me a few hours and I don't want to bog the overall video down. Plus, you'll get to see how the storyboard sketches look anyway, as I use them as reference layers when doing the final render. I wanted to start off the story with the two characters immediately seeing one another. For the sake of simplicity, instead of just calling them the characters, I'm going to call the boy character the boy and the mermaid girl character the girl. In the second page, I wanted to dedicate its entirety to just the boy and the girl looking at each other, almost like they're in stunned silence as they are trying to figure out what they're each looking at. get to see here from the boy's perspective at what traits of the girl he focuses on. First, her scales and her cheeks within her tail, before we see the almost full view of the girl looking up at him questioningly. And then, almost appropriately timed as the girl speaks, the boy screams, which then startles the girl and causes her to scream too. I'm not going to narrate through every detail of every scene since I will be showing the full manga at the end of the video, and you can see for yourself how the story progresses. I will, however, stop to explain some key moments or any thoughts I had while rendering. You may have also seen in the girl's text bubbles there's random scribbles, whereas in the boy's text bubbles there's only one or a couple words. In the boy's case, this helps me later on when I do the dialogue to remind me what the boy is generally talking about in any given scene. For the girl, her bubbles are filled with random squiggles by intention, since she's not speaking any language that the boy or the audience would be familiar with. I think it creates a fun dynamic where there's two characters that speak completely different languages trying to cross that barrier to come to some sort of understanding. But here, since both characters are just kids and we're mainly seeing everything from the boy's point of view, the boy is just trying to infer what the girl is saying based on what he believes, given that she is part fish. If you couldn't tell already, backgrounds are my weakness. No matter what, I almost always have trouble drawing backgrounds, especially when I'm admittedly putting myself on a time crunch. I left each background I did make simple, but not lacking enough as to where it's unknown where the characters are standing in relation to each other. Eventually, the boy figures out that the girl is probably hungry from the way her stomach growls, and he takes out a rice ball from his bag and offers it to her, to which she unexpectedly bites his hand and he gives her a smack on the head. Around this point in the drawing process, I was getting super tired. I set up timers in real life to let me know when I should take a break, drink water, and deal with my basic human needs. I'm the kind of person where once I focus on drawing, it's hard for me to stop and I greatly lose track of time. I think around this time in the process, it's been around 6 or 7 hours since I made the initial sketches of the characters, and I've been at my desk essentially all day. It makes me think about what real mangaka artists have to deal with every day when creating their works. Even when they have more time on their hands and people to help divvy up the work, it can still take a long time to get that satisfying level of quality for publishing. I'm not sure if it's apparent here, but in these last few pages I was starting to get really burnt out and I just wanted to finish so I could eat and head to bed. I did surprise myself and ended up finishing the manga I think at around 10 or 11 PM, which I started around 12 o'clock that day. It does take a certain amount of passion for artists to do what they do every day, and I commend each and every one of them for having such time and patience to hone a very time-consuming skill, I would say. I'm by no means a professional, but I hope this video can reach some of you inspiring manga artists and comic artists out there to practice and create what you love. For as drained as I was when I finished, as an artist, there's no better feeling than seeing your work to completion. Cause this is what I live for. Anyway, I think that's about enough talking from me. Thank you all for watching and sticking through this process with me. Here's what I was able to create in one day.